Cool. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Worldviews. Today, we have on Brenda King. She was the former creator of God is Gray, and she currently explores the gray areas of faith, spirituality, and we'll dive into her journey, her views on Christianity, where they were, and where they are today. Brenda, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Brenda, can you first share with us your upbringing and how it shaped your early faith?
Okay. So I grew up what I'd call casual Catholic, which is like we went to church on holidays and guilty Sundays. And I always had a very deep intuitive resonance with spirituality, God. I know in some of your pre-questions you had, do I have any paranormal experience or ghost stories? Like the answer is yes. I felt really tapped into spirituality in the other world since I was a child. And I've always also been very justice oriented. Like there's nothing that drives me more insane than injustice when someone's wrongfully imprisoned, when something I deem to be unjust or antichrist, frankly, the antithesis of love, the antithesis of Jesus, when I see those enacted in the world, it really drives me absolutely bonkers. Um, I think that's what first really informed my spiritual practice. Like, I remember this distinct moment when I was a little girl realizing for the first time that war existed because I grew up in like, I call it like a silent white household, like, where everyone's just, like, buttoned up at the dinner table, and they're like, "How's the weather?" and "Where are you going to school?" and that sort of thing. We weren't really, like, getting down and dirty talking about what people were going through. It was a very silent on sex, silent on politics, silent on anything that would kind of cause an upset at the dinner table. But so I was really shaded and masked from a lot of the macro horrors of the world, and also shaded and masked from the more micro horrors that can happen within a family or within the traumas that we pass down generationally as a family. So for some reason, I remember this moment where as a child, I might have been like 8 years old or something, it just hit me like a ton of bricks, like war exists. And I remember crying and crying, crying until I fell asleep because it felt so wrong and so antichrist, even though I wouldn't have used that language at the time. And then I just became fascinated with Christianity because my dad was very Bible reading and he would share Bible stories with me. And I really like church and the incense and the uh, pomp and circumstance of Catholicism, which I still think is quite beautiful. And then when I was 12 years old, I ended up being what I would call indoctrinated into the Evangelical Christian church. And this would have been, now I'm going to age myself, when this would be like late 90s, early 2000s, where I had that experience. So we weren't yet like trumping Christians. We weren't yet super political, but I was definitely indoctrinated with the idea that being gay was a sin and tithing 10% and the more conservative, evangelize the world sort of principles. And then I went on my own journey of deconstructing that indoctrination and finding, again, sort of this more pure, intuitive, genuine faith that I had felt when I was a little girl. I feel like I'm finally, after many years, back to that.
What was the spark that caused the deconstruction phase?
There were 2 things. One is that I never bought the being gay as a sin. Like, I remember, thinking that when we're young, especially in the 80s, there was a lot of stranger danger. Like, our parents were really told, like, "Don't talk to strangers." Make sure we were taught to never get in a white van, don't take candy from a stranger, and really taught a bit about, like, your own intuitive ping when something is wrong. I remember my mom and Oprah, who was the queen of our household, telling me and explaining that, like, if something doesn't feel right, it's not right. You have to follow it. If someone comes up to you and is like, "I know your mom and I have a puppy in the back," if that strikes you as wrong, you listen to that feeling, and that's your body telling you something is off, and you run in the other direction. And by the time I was 12 and being told that gay people go to hell and that being LGBTQ is a sin, I remember it made me feel nauseous. It made my goosebumps on my arms and my hair stand up. It made me feel sick. It made me feel like a white van coming up and telling me there was a puppy in the back. It struck me as completely antithetical to what my spirit was telling me is right and wrong. But I still swallowed it because I was like, "Well, there are a lot of beautiful things in this church that I do agree with, and I do feel resonant with God, and I know there's a lot of beautiful people in this space." So I stuck it out. And then it wasn't until I was married and I did the whole, like, save virginity and be a good girl and be with one person, and when I found out that he had been cheating on me the entire time we were dating, I had a moment where, like, in deconstruction, a lot of people make the comparison of when you're wearing a sweater. Like, if your true intuitive faith and knowing is your being, but then you wear the indoctrination of this sweater of religion. As soon as you start pulling on one of the threads, the whole thing can start coming apart. So at that time, I started pulling the thread of like, hey, I was a good girl. I did everything that I was told to do. I went to church every Sunday. I tithed, I volunteered, I did everything. And yet I didn't get to live happily ever after like they promised me. And then when you start tugging at that thread, and it's like, and another thing, I never stood behind LGBTQ being a sin, and also another thing. And also at the time, the church was getting more political and telling us how to vote, which honestly, as an American as well, that struck me wrong twofold because I always felt that church and state was to be separated, and that was a core value of being an American, and that was a core value of the church, that anyone would be welcome in that space, no matter their political affiliation. So as soon as they started indoctrinating people into, "You have to vote," Republicans specifically, that was another thread that started to get pulled, where I was like, "I feel like they're losing the plot, and now they've lost me."
How big was your church?
I went from, like, mega church to mega church. This is, like, predominantly in LA because everyone was really, that I knew of, really looked up to Hillsong and passed around Hillsong music. So they were all sort of, quote, unquote, "non-denominational," but really evangelical, what is now nationalistic churches. And, I went to one in New Jersey in my teenage years, and then I went to several here in LA, including first one was Oasis, I went to, Mosaic, and, yeah.
Yeah, and I apologize, did you describe both the reasons you deconstructed, or was that one?
Mm. Both what?
Did you describe both the reasons just now you deconstructed, or was that just one?
Well, the sweater analogy that I'm giving you is to say that as soon as you start pulling
Okay, I
on
see.
one bit of the sweater, it just, like, escalates. Because then you start being like, "Okay, well, they say that the Bible is the inspired word of God." But then you start pouring into that and figuring out, well, who said that, and where does that rhetoric come from, and is that true? And I found a lot of great literature. It's a cliche for a reason because it's true that many people that go into, um, what word am I looking for? The school where you learn to become a pastor,
Oh, like
uh,
seminary?
yeah, when you go into seminary, lots and lots of people deconstruct and wind up not being Christian anymore or not following through. And the reason for that to me is not because Christianity isn't real or because Jesus wasn't the Son of God or whatever it is that you want to believe that are more the Christian principles, but rather because after you've realized that you were told mistruths or half truths or we were given categorizations of certain principles or doctrines, and it starts falling apart, you end up really questioning the core of it as well. And not everyone survives that core questioning part. And a lot of people leave the faith at that juncture. But for me, it actually has only strengthened my faith and made me consider myself a stronger Christian after going through all of that, because now I feel like I'm completely naked of the sweater and I'm just standing like holy and aligned and with Jesus and his principles that as they were originally meant to be taught.
Yeah, yeah, so you define yourself as a more progressive Christian?
I don't like that label anymore because I was in the circle of progressive Christianity and I was arguably one of the, I don't want to say leaders, but one of the voices of it. But I found that that became its own indoctrination into liberal thinking. And like, I think in my experience of Christianity, or rather evangelical Christianity, you weren't allowed to question the status quo. You weren't allowed to say like, "Hey, wasn't a homosexual added to the Bible in 1946?" Like any question that you asked that was valid was really shot down and they were like, "Well, you need to lean in harder to God and it's God's word and no questions asked." That's to me when like truth stands on its own. You don't have to defend the truth. It stands all by itself. So if you're not allowed to question something, then that means there's something shaky and potentially not true about what you're being told. So when I switched over and really took on the label of progressive Christianity, I found that a lot of people in that movement wound up becoming puritanical again, but in a completely different way. And they were puritanical for liberalism. You have to use exactly this right terminology and you can't question the way we are speaking about this. And yeah, people taking on movements of liberalism, which I'm a liberal person and I agree with a lot of it in principle, but I also see that Democrats and the Liberal Party have alienated a lot of people by demanding this precision of language. So I'm at a place where I don't like either. I don't like being indoctrinated or told exactly precisely what to say, how to think, what to believe. And I believe there's a lot of diversity of thought and belief and spirituality that can all exist and honor each other as long as it's found in the principle and tenets of love, like Jesus said.
Okay, so do you I guess how much of the Bible do you follow?
Well, um, I guess the red letters, like they say. I mean, the most crucial and essential one being when the Pharisees were arguing about what is the most important tenet of the faith. Jesus said, love yourself as you love your God, as you love your neighbor. That to me is the holy trinity of love. Because if you are, and I was taught the exact opposite in evangelical Christianity, especially within purity culture. Like one of the most fascinating things I learned in biblical translation is that the word Satan, the root of the word, the original means the divider. So whenever you see division, whenever you see hierarchy, people are better than those people, that is by definition satanic. And in that way, when you're asking a gay person to divide themselves from their sexuality, that's division, that's satanic. When you're asking your gay kid to leave your house because you don't support them anymore and you're dividing families, that's satanic to me. Well, what ICE is doing right now, dividing families, dividing parents from children without fair trial, division, satanic. So Jesus said the exact opposite. He was always talking about being unified. And I was taught a lot that, like, loving myself, listening to my intuition was not good, not allowed. Your heart is deceitful above all things. But I realized in my practice that that is actually, again, a satanic principle. You're asking me to divide my intuitive knowing that whether or not that white van has a puppy in it or a murderer in it, you're asking me to divide that knowing from myself. And Christianity asked me to do that so many times. That's why rape culture is so prevalent in our churches and has been such a problem because when you're dividing people and asking them to not actually feel into their intuitive power, their God-given, Holy Spirit-given power, then you are creating a space where people can't question authority and they don't feel authority within themselves. Whereas Jesus said, "You love yourself as you love your God, as you love your neighbor," meaning that these things are working in synchronicity with each other. The greater love I have for myself, the less divided I feel as a being, the much more capable I am of loving my neighbor wholeheartedly, without jealousy, without deceit, without anger, et cetera, et cetera. And the more in tune I am with my love of God, the same thing, the less angry, the more faith I have to walk through another day and believe in the hope for the future of humanity and our country, et cetera. So that's the principle that I live by, what Jesus said.
Okay. And then I imagine you view Old Testament as just metaphorical.
Mhm. Not I mean, not metaphorical. I we have lots and lots of proof that the Bible has been translated and mistranslated throughout eras and often censored as well. That shouldn't be a controversial thing to say at this time because you can do cursory research and find that there are, first of all, over, I think, 600 translations of the Bible. There are over 400 denominations of Christianity. And to me, that shows again that there's a diversity of thought within our faith practice. And in Judaism, the thing that I've always respected about Judaism is that they allow for discussion and argument, and they allow for people to dissect the text. Like if you're talking about the Old Testament as allegory, that's what Judaism is. It's the Torah. But they don't give like platitudes and say this is definitely X, Y, or Z. They allow for it to change and move and morph and be debated and discussed. And when you don't allow for that, then you have these 400 disorganized sects of Christianity, many of which are no longer based in love. When people really hunker down and go into fear, which is where a lot of evangelical churches are sitting at this moment, fear of the immigrant, fear of the gay person, fear of the trans person in a bathroom. That is like fear, 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 fear. Fear of the wrong candidate getting voted in, fear of civil war. It's like that is not what church is intended to be. It's supposed to be a place of love and acceptance and joy and celebrating gratitude with each other. So, long answer to that question is like, I just think that it's all beautiful ancient texts that should be poured over and it can all speak to you at different times in your life. Like, obviously, when someone says, the Bible is the literal word of God and you bring them Leviticus, it falls apart immediately because it's like, well, are you eating pork? Are you wearing mixed fabrics? Like, you can't actually believe this is a literal word of God when it's been mistranslated from its original text 400 different ways.
Yeah, and did do you think the modern church today still does not allow for difficult questions about the faith itself or scripture?
It depends on the sect because I have a deep and profound respect for Episcopals and the Quakers. The Quakers especially have been incredible with justice and meditative faith and discussion and really adhering to like the basic tenets of love. I come from the East Coast and regions where, people originally came and encountered the indigenous people of America. And I don't know this history too much. I beg forgiveness from anyone from anyone who does, but I do know that the Quakers in the region where I'm from had a great honor for the indigenous people there, and they were working with them unified and really honoring and respecting their practices and who they were. But again, fear of people that are other, fear of scarcity, of feeling like you need to overtake other people, then birthed what became the atrocity of what happened to the indigenous people in America. But Quakers still, from what I understand and know, stand by those principles, and I respect them, and both, accept the LGBTQIA community as well. So if there are certain Christians that are able to do it and pour over it, and I never see it. It's really not, changing anything about God. It's getting more revelation. Like, I love this one theologian named Pete Enns. He has a lot of beautiful work. One of those books is called How the Bible Actually Works, and he talks about the historical context and how the word of God is supposed to be this living, breathing thing. It wasn't supposed to stagnate 2,000 years ago. We are supposed to continue evolving and growing with it. And if we don't allow for that change, then justice will continue to be stifled. We'll continue to fear people, and we'll continue to behave in ways that are the antithesis to Christ as Christians.
Yeah, and you mentioned you mentioned Satan earlier, so you believe that Satan exists.
I believe that this planet is on a polarity of love and fear. That love is the absolute antithesis of Christ and Christ consciousness, and that's where, like, a child resides, that's where a dog resides, just in, like, absolute love, and then there is no denying that there is a lot of evil and darkness in this world, so, of course, there is also the polar opposite side, which would be division and fear and shame and hatred at the other side. I don't know if it's like an entity with horns, but there's certain things that you could view, like what's happening in Gaza right now, for example, and I can very quickly and easily identify that as the work of something satanic and evil. Not the people, but the spirit of it.
Yeah, but do you believe in, like, I guess, a supernatural entity as Satan? Or do you believe more of, like, a maximum evil on the planet, and you view that as Satan?
I think this is the fun of faith. I think it would be so freaking amazing if this is what Christianity was. Like, if instead of, like, wasting time going in circles debating about trans people in sports, that we were all having, like, beautiful, elevated, fun conversations about, like, what is this entity? How do we defeat it? How do we bring people to love? How do we bring people to Christ consciousness? Like, I don't know. This planet is crazy. There's, like, no way to know except that I definitely believe I'm not alone. Like I said in the beginning of this conversation, like, I've, especially when I was a little girl, felt like spirits or entities or presence around me. I think kids are very in tune to that because they haven't been told to, like, shut it out yet. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that's the fun of faith. Like, imagine, who knows what it is? What do you believe it is?
What, Satan is?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Satan's certainly a real entity that I guess scripture would describe him as the god of this world necessarily. Yeah, I definitely believe Satan's real. I think hell exists. I think all those are definitely real. I think definitely the maximum evil in the world that occurs. I mean, it doesn't have to be the maximum. It could be even be just a lot of evil or the next level of it.
Medieval.
Yeah, medieval, I guess you can call it. Is definitely the works of the devil, and I definitely think there is a place of eternal separation from God that does exist at a
Eternal, yeah?
yeah,
Do you
I
know
think
that
so.
in Judaism, Jewish people don't believe in hell because the literal translation of the Torah never says eternal. I do not believe in an eternal separation from God.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I feel like it has to I mean, I can see why they wouldn't believe in it because they also don't subscribe to Jesus being the Son of God, so there's not like a in the whole idea of an incarnation isn't really a thing there, so therefore, if hell exists, Jesus pretty much died for or I'm sorry, if hell doesn't exist, Jesus would have died for nothing, is what I'm saying. That's a part of the reason why I subscribe for it, which is tells me that's why they don't necessarily believe it because they don't really have to. But that's also but I guess that's not fair to say. I feel like it's also Judaism is interesting because I've heard multiple opinions from different Jews on how they think about numerous thing. I guess you could make the same case for Christians too. Christians have very much debate internal topics. Jews do the same thing. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the whole Satan being real or not. I just feel like things are so evil, and if you have God being the maximum good, there has to be the other side of it too.
Yeah, I believe this, planet that we're on, I don't know why. I I paused to call it a video game because 'cause I'm not trying to diminish it or sound like one of those people that says it's all a simulation, although, honestly, who knows? But I think that, this planet is very clearly, like I said, this polarity. So, um alchemy is like what we are meant to be doing. I think that's what Christ was really asking of us. And I personally believe that hell is here and that heaven is here. I believe there's an afterlife where we all become one again, that we're all completely in love with Christ, with God, back together again, not in separation. But this place is, I believe, a place where our spiritual body, our spiritual selves are having a human experience. And that our mission here is really to align with Christ consciousness and love as much as humanly possible, which is challenging because when we come here, like if you see it on a line, it's a horizontal line between absolute love and absolute fear. And we are constantly going back and forth on this line. I really believe our propensity to so called sin is actually just our ability to take on these vampiric emotions of fear, shame, or pain. And I call them vampiric because I really believe that we are born. Like if you meet a brand new baby or even a dog, for example, you see the purity in their eyes, the light. They are living in that absolute love, untarnished. And I believe that's who we are at the very center core of our beings. I personally do not believe that a person can be evil, full stop. I think evil is categorized by the actions that you take in this life that cause harm to people, that therefore cause you to have a harmful and lead an evil life, but still that person is not evil at their core. So when you are like on this scale, I think we as Christians, what you're doing here is so beautiful, asking people of different perspectives to speak to each other. I feel that's such an invitation to move away from this divided territory and come into more unity with people so that because when you talk to people, like often if you're in your own bubble and you're talking to people who believe the same thing as you can begin demonizing and dehumanizing people that believe something different. But so often when we sit together and have conversations like this, there is a unity occurs and we see where we see eye to eye. And I believe it really pushes us both more into this love place where we can orient there and see each other as human beings. So to me, what you're doing it is like an act of love. It's an act of Christianity. But um, yeah, that's essentially what I believe that we're here to figure out how to alchemize all of our fear, shame, and pain into love. Like I said, love for ourselves, love for God, love for our neighbors.
Yeah, I guess where do you, because you mentioned earlier that a lot of the Jesus' teachings on love is where you get a lot of your Christianity from. What other sources do you kinda tag on to? Because you use also the term Christ consciousness a lot, uh, and you're going down that stretch about the line of polarity on the earth and heaven and hell could be here. Where'd you get all the knowledge of that information from?
Um, honestly, let me see. I again, when I was little, I had this very intuitive connection to divinity and what I felt was Jesus and God. And I radiated a lot of love, felt very, very deeply for others and for myself and for like the large collective macro wars in other countries and like micro, my family, my school, my immediate, friends. And the only thing that pulled me away from that was these particular churches that I went to that began telling me that God was X, Y, and Z. That's like the sweater that I believe I was started putting on because I truly do. Like Jesus says it himself as well, like listen to the children. Listen to the wisdom that children have because they do have the most inherent intuitive wisdom. They don't look at people and divide them by how much money they have, what their skin color is, where they came from. Kids do not give a flying fuck. They just read a person, feel their energy. Do they feel safe? Do they feel warm? Do they feel scary? Do they feel dangerous. And I really believe that, like, after I took off that sweater and got rid of things that I considered vampiric, things that I actually never believed intuitively myself, like the gay being a sin thing, then what I was left with was, like, raw nakedness, honestly, which is a really scary, discombobulating place to be. I think, the work I did on God is Gray, I consider, like, my deconstructionist project, where I really looked at all that stuff and did a lot of research. To answer your question more succinctly, like, I researched a lot of, books, people, theologians that had a broader understanding of the Bible, like Pete Enns, or people that had done work in their own deconstruction, more ancient views of the text, more original translations of certain words that have been passed down to us wrongly. And but in the deconstruction of it, I really did feel like I was laid bare. And then I was like, do I even pray anymore? And then when I felt this lot of like puritanical nonsense coming from the liberal progressive Christian movement, I then found myself really bitter about that again and feeling like I'd been hurt by the church all over again in some strange way. So I really didn't know where I stood with it at all. But right after I had my baby, I think maybe a week and a half or so, I had an experience that was incredibly enlightening. People would refer to it as a divine download, and I almost went into this like trance-like state. Sorry if that was loud. I almost went into this trance-like state, and I was on the phone with my parents at the same time, and I was writing a note on my phone because this whole message of the concept of polarity was coming to me. And when I researched polarity, the polarities of love and fear, I learned that it's based in like ancient Hermenetic Egyptian principle. And I know at this point you might say I'm getting very far away from Christianity, but it is historically far away from Christianity. It predates it, but it's the foundation of where this world is to me. Like when I after I had that experience, which again, people may or may not believe me and frankly don't really care anymore, which is a really nice feeling as well. But it's all very very Christ-centric to me because when he was here, he just leaned into that love. And to be clear, that is I've been accused of meaning like, saying that that means there's no accountability in this world for anybody, like, just love, just free love. It's like, it's not free love. Love includes accountability, and I held a lot of people accountable on God is Gray as well, especially, concerning the rape culture that's been a big problem within our churches. So it's not like willy-nilly anything goes. It's accountability. Love is everything that the Bible describes as well. It's patient, it's kind, it's forgiving, like that cliché Corinthians that is said at all the weddings. That is what love is. Love is hard work, and it requires you to, like, go into childhood trauma, figure out why you're so angry or why you're so sad or depressed about things, and really, like, look those things in the eye and alchemize them and figure out how to forgive, how to love, and move yourself away from those emotions that really hold us back in life.
Yeah, and I guess within all your beliefs and everything, is there anything about any part of what you believe that you emotionally disagree with, but you still submit to?
Um, I get the first thing that comes to mind is I think of the stages of grief a lot when I think of deconstruction, and you could be deconstructing like the nationalism of America or or evangelical Christianity, etc. Anything you're deconstructing, the healthcare system and it not working properly. If you're a nurse, anytime you're deconstructing a system, even a family system, someone's character, you go through the phases of grief, which includes denial and heartbreak, and anger is one of them. And I felt a lot of anger in my pursuit of God is gray. And I always centered myself and like calmed down before I shot a video because I didn't want to project anger into the world. I wanted people to hear these messages without getting enraged because I really think anger serves its purpose. It points out, it illuminates something that needs to change, something that's unjust. But I also believe you have to alchemize that and move that through your body and not project it. Otherwise, you're just making other people really angry. um, but that said, people are going to get angry regardless because that's what deconstruction does. And in that phase, I remember I was really pissed because I was reading Paul's words in the Bible about women not speaking in church. And I got really upset and felt very betrayed by God because Paul is such an exalted figure. And he is known for hurting so much of the LGBTQ community with his letters that are taken out of context and mistranslated, but I didn't know that at the time. I just was reading the Bible and I slammed it and I was like, "Fuck Paul, fuck him." And I just started raging about him. And I felt conviction, which is really interesting because what I'm describing is not a free for all. I feel like my character, I am more beholden to good character and morality than I personally ever was within the church because it's mine, it belongs to me, and I know why I stand on it. But at the time, and that's where you hear conviction, you can feel it in your body. It's different than shame. Shame is like an embarrassment or like, "Oh, I say something wrong." But conviction is like, "Oh, shit, I said something off." And I felt that when I said it. So I kind of like backed up and started praying, and I was like, "Okay, I feel bad for saying fuck Paul. Like, why?" And that set me on the course of learning about the mistranslations and really understanding where he was coming from better and why he was an exalted figure. And it changed my perspective. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, kinda. I guess, is there anything now that you are submitted to that you still emotionally disagree with?
Yeah, sure. Like, I would love to just like do drugs and have sex with everybody and like, I don't know, sleep in and do what I like, there's so many things that,
Oh, I
like
guess from, in your within your Christian faith.
oh, well, I mean, is that not a part of it? Like, leading with your own, like, convictions and your sense of morality?
I mean, it could be, but I think you can make a case that there are things like, say, take a conservative Christian, for example.
Yes.
Something they emotionally disagree with might be something like, "Well, I would like to have sex before marriage, but the Bible says don't do that." But and therefore, they're gonna submit to that because the Bible says so, even though they emotionally disagree with the fact that they can't have sex because their emotions are probably, I assume, pretty, I guess, sexual or horny, if you will. So, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to think about the word emotion, because I think my answer is probably still the same, I guess. Because, like, emotionally, you can be sort of, like, carried by the wind, like, emotionally, I would say I would love to project anger. Like, there's nothing that makes me laugh more or, like, I enjoy more than being petty sometimes. Like, when someone says something to me, I just wanna go to the most petty thing, and that's my emotion of anger or rage or fear or feeling like I'm better than somebody else. Those are emotions that come up. And I think it's my responsibility as a Christian woman to sit with those, let them run through my body, really process them so that I can come to whatever person has upset me with the love that I feel beholden to as a Christian.
Mm. And yeah, and I also wanna hit on because you when you did God is Gray, you had a lot of videos about purity culture. Uh, what do you think was the most harmful aspect of purity culture itself?
Well, the rape culture of it, because I know that might be considered like a liberal, like hot phrasing or something, but it really is a thing. Like, um, this isn't my story to tell, so let me think of how to tell it without giving it away. I talked to someone who was we were all fed this purity culture together, a lot of object exercises. They were majority given to women and not to men. Like when I was growing up in church, all the boys would spit in a glass and then hand the glass to the last boy and say, "Would you drink this?" And he's like, "Ew, no." And they would compare that glass to a woman that's had sex with multiple men. Or they would pass around a rose and every guy takes a rose petal, and at the end, you have nothing. That is complete bullshit. Like, sexuality and the energy and life force of a woman is wholly renewable and beautiful and sacred, and we should have never, ever been taught that we were less than. And at the time, I feel like the phrasing has softened up, but trust me, the message is still just as brutal as ever. Like, there was never any exceptions made for rape when I was in church. No one ever said, "Oh, but you're not spit-in or you didn't lose any flower petals if you've been raped." So, women that, like, let's say have been systematically raped by a member of their family, which is unfortunately statistically way too high, or someone in the church is being given the message that they are depleting and they're becoming less than every time they have sex or someone is violating, or rather, in that case, when someone is raping them, violating them. So that has been incredibly destructive to people. And also the indoctrination that men are just these repressible sexual beings. I always felt like such an insane, weird anomaly that I felt really sexual and horny. So I both felt like there was something wrong with me for feeling sexual, paired with we were given this message that men like just couldn't control themselves. So you better not wear a spaghetti strap. You better not walk a certain way. And I know a girl who was 14 years old at the time who was indoctrinated into all the same things that I was, being given these messages. She was told to wear a big t-shirt when we went to the pool to hide her blossoming body because she was just developing faster than all of us. And she was told to stop swaying her hips so much because men in the congregation were feeling tempted by her, which I find despicable because it's like, how can you give us all these messages about the strength of men and how men are our protectors and our leaders, and yet tell us that a 14-year-old girl walking the way she walks is some kind of terrible imposition for you that's going to make you just not be able to control your sexuality? And that girl was eventually raped by one of the leaders at the church, and she never told anybody because she had already been indoctrinated for, like, 3 years at that point to believe that she bore just as much responsibility for that as he did. For example, that's the worst one maybe, but there's a lot worse. In Hillsong, for example, Brian, Houston and the whole church covered up his father's crimes. He was a prolific pedophile, a rapist of young boys in the original Hillsong church, and those crimes were covered up till the day he died. Um, these are the products of, like, exalting men and telling people that they can't be questioned and that they have no control over their sexuality, and then we all just have to tolerate their, quote, "sins" and forgive them.
Yeah, so it sounds like this is more purity culture in its strictest form. Is that fair to say?
No.
You don't
No,
think so?
this is, like, a very, very prevalent message that's everywhere. This is the way that most evangelical churches teach about sexuality and a woman's worth and a man's lack of ability to control himself. Like, it's his cross to bear that he has to control himself. It's actually not that hard.
Yeah, and 'cause I guess what are your thoughts on the whole I'd be curious to hear you say about this. Do you think it's unsafe as well for priests to have to remain celibate?
Yes. I think
Do you
we
think
have lots of proof of that.
Yeah, I imagine you would say it's better if they were given it'd be better off for all of society if they were given the ability to be married or get married and whatever.
I mean, I don't know exactly, like, the root of that horrendous, horrendous problem within the Catholic Church that's been covered up. Like, they would just transfer those priests to different communities where they would start their crimes all over again. So few of those priests have been held responsible ever. Um, I mean, that comes down to a lack of, humanity. I don't know if it would help if they were married, because there's married guys in the Christian Evangelical church that go, like, rape people as well. It's a big problem within our American churches. Um, I don't maybe it's because I don't know. These people are maybe drawn to the unchecked power that the church gives them. Maybe it's because of the access they have with privacy with people, or their, ability to indoctrinate people into believing certain things or silencing them. I don't know exactly why. And I'll say too, it's a big problem too among, like, soccer coaches and ballet teachers, and, it's not just the Christian church. I think our nation at large has a very large problem with, not facing the reality of pedophilia and how prevalent it actually is, and how completely under-discussed it is, especially for men and boys. A lot of men that I know harbor secrets, that are kept in shame for the rest of their lives, because it's considered very shameful and embarrassing for a man to be raped or assaulted, by another man or by a woman also. So it's just a huge conversation that I don't think has even been properly started. I keep saying that it's time for men to have a Me Too movement, because men have gone through, like, anecdotally, I used to think it was so fun to ask people how they lost their virginity, because I was just fascinated by sex and those stories. But I had so many men tell me, like, "Oh, I wasn't ready, but my babysitter or my mom's friend came into my room." Or, like, Lil Wayne, for example, was, I think, 13 years old in the studio, and they, like, basically forced him to have sex with this woman in the room. Like, we haven't even started those conversations, but I think it's that shame, like, shame festers in the dark when we're not speaking these things out loud, and we keep covering up these people's crimes out of shame or out of fear that it's gonna scare people away from the church. All it does is make church one of the most unsafe places for children.
I agree with the sexual harassment piece against men is very under recorded, if you will, and it's because men don't usually talk about that. It's usually, at least in my own anecdotal experience, the men that have talked about it usually do that under the pretense that they're only around other men to talk about it. They're not gonna, like, tell their families or their wives or girls or women in their lives about this information. I remember a time where this must have been, a couple years ago, within about a week span, 3 people that I knew admitted to me that something had happened to them when they were at least younger,
Mm.
which was awfully sad, uh, and yeah, so I just all to say, I do agree. There needs to be some kinda more of a
Kudos to
discussion there.
Yeah, kudos to you for being the kind of person that people feel safe with in that way. That's really beautiful. I always hope that for men. And women need to give more grace to men too. Like, expecting you guys to never cry or to consider it a weakness if you admitted something like that. Like, I think there are some women that do make it feel dangerous, or, like, they would question a man's manhood if he and I think, again, it's just the lack of education, it's a lack of understanding, because it's a conversation that hasn't begun yet. And I was talking to a fellow sex educator just the other night. We were talking about how consent has been such a big conversation in our society, and thank God for it. Like, I'm grateful for the Me Too movement and how it made enthusiastic consent become a part of our vernacular that people know and understand. But I think the next part of that conversation is called mutuality. And in the sex education sphere, that means that not only is there an enthusiastic yes, but like it's exactly as it sounds. There's mutuality. We both really want to be there. It's like it's beyond the language of a yes or no. It's reading body language. It's really checking in with each other to make sure. And I think a lot of women, or I don't know if this is true, but I would say a lot of people get raped or assaulted. Or like, do you remember that Aziz Ansari story that came out in the Me Too movement?
No, I don't
It
think
was
so.
kind of this girl that, like, I think had sex or a sexual experience of some kind with the comedian, Aziz Ansari, and then I think she was kind of trying to express that she felt like in the moment she hadn't wanted it, that he didn't rape her and she didn't say no, and, it was this very, like, complex, sticky, like, she just I think maybe wasn't able to express or didn't know how to get herself out of a situation that she didn't want to be in. And I think that's where mutuality comes in. And I've noticed a lot of guy friends talking to me about, quote, having sex, but something that I would actually consider assault or rape when that mutuality is blown right through. Like women can be like, why won't you get hard for me? Don't you think I'm pretty? Why won't you have sex with me? That is all manipulative and needs to stop as well because that enthusiastic consent, mutuality needs to come from the men and boys as well. So, all of that said, I think until the conversation is had between both sexes, it's going to sort of, like, stagnate, and men are still gonna feel, like, left out of the conversation or villainized or demonized when in fact they have suffered a lot as well.
Yeah, what you said there actually reminded me of, there's this book by David Buss called Why Men Behave Badly, and it's actually a super fascinating book. I recommend everyone reads it for both genders, really. And there's a part of the book where he talks about how they did a study in which they asked a group of men about if they'd ever gone a little too far with a woman past her comfort level. And they were more likely to agree to saying yes to that if the person asking it didn't use the word rape, which I thought was
Yeah,
very
that
fascinating.
makes sense.
If the sentence was formed just a little differently, they were more likely to say, "Yes, we I probably went a little too far." Not
Mm,
to say I'm anti-men or anything like that. I just thought that was, like, a super interesting it just took the phrasing for the admission of it. Uh, but yeah,
yeah.
that was good book. But cool. And I want to ask you about, I guess, what's next for you? Because I know God is Gray is kind of on pause or ended. What do you think you're going to do next with your, I guess, creative endeavors?
Right now I'm working as an intimacy coordinator in film and TV, which means I like choreograph and work on sex and intimate scenes. Yeah.
Wow, I never met one of those. How's that how's that going?
It's really, really fun. I got turned on to it through my actress friend, Emily Mead, who was, like, instrumental in making intimacy coordination something that is required in Hollywood. So she is, like, an activist and an amazing woman. But when she was doing her activism and learning about it, I was like, "What's this job? This sounds so cool." So I just, like, trained for it, and, I'm really enjoying it, and then I'm just a mother as well. I'm raising my son, he's almost 6, his name is Valentine, so that takes up a lot of my time and mental energy, and then I'm working on a couple books. One of them is gonna be about the fires in Los Angeles because, I lost our home here in Los Angeles, so that'll be, like, my next memoir. And then I am going to write a book about this polarity concept that came to me so that I can, yeah, spread that message of love that I believe I was given on that day. Those are the 2 things on my plate.
Cool. I can tell you love because you named your son Valentine. And then two, I was curious to hear what, like, movies and TV shows you've worked on so far, if any so far.
Oh, well, there's okay. Well, a lot of like indies, so maybe not
And he's
something you would know, but one of the biggest one would be a Snoop and Dre video. That was
Oh,
fun.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Did you get to meet them and stuff?
Yeah. I've actually met them both before, but
Oh, wow. So
it's
they probably recognized you.
LA. No, it's just LA. But yeah, it's super fun.
Wow, and I know we talked earlier about the paranormal supernatural encounters, but did you have any others that came to mind that you wanted to discuss?
I guess I would just say that like I've been God, what's this girl's name? She's not a girl, she's a woman. I was listening to a podcast from this psychic. I'm trying to look her up. I think her name's Laura. I don't know. I mean, I'll find it for you, but she has had this like intuitive gift since she was a little girl, and I have been experiencing death for the first time in my life, which is amazing that it's just happening to me now. I lost like a really close friend to suicide, and then I lost both of my grandparents this year. And I was always taught that like, my dad used to always say that if a spirit comes to you in the form of someone that you love or knew that's actually just a demon in disguise and you have to tell them to go away, like, again, lots of fear, fear, fear around that experience. But there are certain things happen from my experience when someone passes away where if you're open and attuned and you can feel their love, you can feel them, like, sitting beside you. There's certain I had a dream about my one friend who passed away that was very vivid and very, very sweet, and, I just think being more open to the fact that life is much bigger than us and understanding, like, again, you have to tap into that intuitive power. I really can't believe that evangelicalism taught me so much to divide myself in that way, but that's like a tool of, oppression and a tool of oppressing your real intuitive God-given knowing about something, because you really need that intuition, like, if you're gonna open your heart and think, like, "What if there's other entities around, good or evil, or my passed away grandparent?" You have to be tapped in and quiet and still and, like, awake to make sure that you're not doing anything wild. Like, I, for example, would never play with a Ouija board or anything. Like, I don't think we should be completely open willy-nilly to anything in the world. But if you're tapped into love and just really into that, I think that there's a lot of wisdom that can come to us through dreams and just through the silence of, like, meditation and prayer and listening to the people that we love that are no longer with us.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, the Ouija board thing is just a little scary,
I
but
know, have you ever done it?
no, thank God I've never done it. I was never a middle school kid that had friends that were like, "Hey, let's do this Ouija board just because." Very
Yeah.
lucky because literally they sell them at Barnes& and Noble for $25. It's pretty absurd that the access to the spiritual realm is so easy that you can literally go to the store and buy the access to it.
I
I always
know.
thought that was a pretty absurd concept. So, given all your experiences in your life up to this point, do you have any doubts still in the existence of God?
No.
Not one. Never.
No. No, now less so than ever. Like, I told you about that point where I was, like, laid bare. I think that, again, through the anger phase of deconstruction, I had a lot of, like, disrespect and anger feelings towards the church. I still have a righteous anger, especially with what I'm seeing with Christian nationalism and ICE and the removal of people's rights and like the weird obsession with trans people and gay people. It's like, dude, you guys have lost the plot on me. But after being laid bare and like just coming back to center, I just really started realizing like, oh, prayer is incredibly valuable to me and praying with people that I love and getting in spaces with other people who believe the same things with me is very powerful. I can feel it like when I meditate or pray with other people who are aligned with me spiritually, I feel like drunk or high afterwards. Like I love thinking where two or more are gathered, God is there. Like I feel that presence still all the time. So yeah, I don't doubt it at all.
Okay. And one question you would ask God if you knew He'd answer it right now, what would you ask?
What do I do with all this evil? Like when I
What do you do with all this evil?
yeah, like I saw like I am very deeply affected by, like I said, I was gonna say macro, like things in the world, but for example, I live in LA, so like ICE coming and kidnapping our citizens and tearing apart families. Like when I see that imagery, it's so blatantly evil and wrong to me. Those people are missing from Alligator Alcatraz, and the arrogance and deceit and everything of the leaders that are enforcing that is really despicable to me. Um, and same thing, like, I saw a terrible image from Gaza that it kept me up at night for days and cried for so long, and I would really like to know how we witness and bear witness to things like that and still align with Jesus and with love, and I think I'm in the process of figuring this out with this polarity concept to keep moving through, keep focusing on love. Like you said, I do love love. It's like my favorite thing in the world. I really believe in it. And I believe that's Christianity in its entirety. So, yeah, that's what I want. I'm just like, dang, this place is so painful. Like, holy moly. What do I do with this pain?
Cool. Well, Brenda, I appreciate the time. Any last words, tips, pieces of wisdom you want to leave with the audience?
Um, just that, yeah, you're dope. I love what you're doing. Like, I
Oh, thank you.
feel, yeah, I think that anyone that is inviting different perspectives, and like I said, like just being a place where conversations can happen is something that I truly admire and respect. And I mean, you haven't shared any of your views in this conversation. I hogged the whole thing.
You're the
but
interviewee.
but I felt very, very respected and heard. And yeah, so I think that's great. I think that's a great output for the world. And I would encourage anyone to do that. If you don't know a gay person, a trans person, a black person, a white person, an immigrant, like you need to like hit the streets and start meeting some people because I guarantee you will not be able to be so fearful and divisive and angry when you're in the presence of like human beings. Get off the internet, touch grass, as they say, meet your neighbor. Amen.
Heck yeah. Thanks for coming on, Brenda.
All right.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.